Hello my friends, welcome back to a different kind of video. Not one of my normal analyses, not a let's play, and I suppose something casual, but in this case, it is a response video. If you didn't know, WiseCrack has been in the game of evaluating the philosophy in video games and behind video games a lot longer than I have. And they recently did a video of the philosophy behind the story of Fallout 4. It's an extremely interesting video, and since this is a response video, I highly suggest you go watch that one before you come and listen to the rest of mine, link in the description below. In evaluating the narrative behind Fallout 4, WiseCrack chose to take a humanist versus post-humanist perspective and filter in how they looked at the different interactions of the different storylines, the different factions, and the various conflicts that happened between the other characters that weren't really related to them. Everything from the Brotherhood of Steel's hypocrisy in how they characterized humanity versus how they ended up using technology in a similar way, only external, while the Institute had a humanist philosophy that focused on creating internal technology, but also in externally creating something that was as close to human but not human, still a technology that could be controlled. Something that is going to be important to keep in mind is Fallout 4's timeline on how the Institute made the different generations of synth. The first generations were just pure robots, very clunky, not very good for anything. The second generation of synths were far more advanced robots which had very complex function, but no higher order cognitive reasoning or anything like that. Then the Institute attempted to upload actual human brain scans of full brain downloads into their second generation synths, and that resulted in the synths like Nick Valentine and the others that are in the Far Harbor DLC. Finally, the third generation synths are a complete departure, even though they're the ones that we are mostly discussing throughout this game, in that they are 100% biologically identical to humans, other than the fact that they were made in a lab as opposed to being born from a woman. The only difference between a third generation synth and an actual human is not whether or not they are biologically human, but whether or not they have a couple little implants in their brains that allow the Institute to have some degree of control, but not a lot of control, because from what we see in the Institute questline and the banter between different synths in the Institute, is that the control of synth behavior is most often in the form of a social dynamic imposed by other third-generation synth enforcers who have chosen, for whatever reason, to more completely conform to that dynamic in order to have a better station rather than being a standard laborer. They even discussed various side quests with Nick Valentine as the one sentient, or I should say sapient, second-generation synth that our main character encounters and works with throughout the game. Then there was also Madame Curie, who was a pure robot who wanted to become a human because of her special programming, and, spoiler alert, is actually able to accomplish this. And that's where I take issue with WiseCrack's argument here. While the conflict between the Brotherhood of Steel, the Institute, and also the Railroad, which recognized synths as full humans, and the dynamic between those three factions, the Railroad also being mentioned in WiseCrack's video, all three of those organizations failed to grasp the actual dichotomy that was going on, which wasn't a whether something is human or not human, and how that creates rights and respect and value in other people and other things, but the dichotomy between whether a creature, a creation, or a thinking thing is sapient or non-sapient. Now, this is completely understandable because as common English vernacular has us talking, we often always equate the idea of consciousness and sentience with the term sapience. However, they describe very different ideas. And to make it more confusing, we also combine the term human with the term person, in that the word human describes the actual biological state that we find ourselves in, being this specific thing with this specific kind of DNA and working in this way, whereas the term person, by a philosophic definition, describes the state of having the fullness of rights available to a thinking thing. To get through the semantic debate real quick so I don't spend too much time on it, let me just throw some dirty definitions out there. Sentience is defined as the condition or character or the capacity of sensation or feeling. So that basically just means you exist in a state in which you are an organism and the parts of your organism react to stimuli. And that could be any form of reaction. That could be our pain reaction. That could be bruising on a banana. Depending on how far you want to take the definition, any biological reaction to external stimuli counts as sentience. Sapience, however, can be defined as having or showing great wisdom or sound judgment. Judgment is the key factor here in that it describes the state of not only receiving signals and having a biological reaction to them, but to actually evaluate those signals and at least have a subjective experience of making decisions, or a subjective experience of the awareness of the fact that those things are happening to you. In other words, sapience can be described as an awareness of being sentient. And because you are aware of sentience and can think about it, you therefore have more than just a passive, unaware interaction of physics. That awareness, in turn, results in the creature or organism having rights, because by violating that creature's sentience, they become aware of the fact that they are being violated, that they are being harmed. You see, if we reduce the narrative of Fallout 4 to a merely humanist, post-humanist argument, then the idea of a non-human thing which has sapience becomes irrelevant, despite the fact that that sapience guarantees those non-human things rights. The difficulty with the humanist, post-humanist lens of evaluating this game is that the three major factions of the Institute, the Brotherhood, and the Railroad couldn't get over looking at the world from a human lens. Even post-humanist philosophy, which tries to look at the human as going beyond what humanity is now through technology, is still looking at the world on the basis of humanity and expanding that definition, rather than attempting to see that there may be a condition where humanity is an irrelevant factor. Instead, if we apply a sapient, non-sapient spectrum for whether we are assigning the different groups that are being treated differently in this game, the synths and robots and ghouls, all the problems fall away. If we can recognize that a non-human thing, a non-human synth, a non-human ghoul, if you want to consider the ghouls non-humans, a non-human robot, a robot brain that was put into a non-human synthetic body, all of that is irrelevant if the thing is still sapient, in the same way that humans are. Or even if they are sapient in a way that humans are not, attaining sapience gives them the same rights. And I really think that's the only way to merge the narratives of many of the side quests with the main quest of Fallout 4. Not just whether or not something should be considered human, but whether or not a non-human thing, no matter how more or less similar to humans it may be, is still sapient and deserves rights. Well, that's all I have to say on the topic. Know that this response video goes out in absolutely no bad faith. I love WiseCrack, I love what they do, I love their videos. Go support them more. Whoever's watching me ought to be watching them too. But now that we've hit the end of the video, let's do a little bit of a game. A game of who done it better. If you think I hit the nail on the head more than WiseCrack, go ahead and give me that subscribe button. That way you can see more of what I do, and also tell me when I'm wrong when I make something that's egregiously wrong in the future. Thank you so much for watching and listening, everyone, and as always, stay true.
I love those deer.